In an age where religion and rulership were inseparable, a single night in November threatened to unmake a nation. This is about the cold heart of early 17th century England, a realm still raw from the Reformation, where secret masses, priest holes, and recusant fines made faith itself a perilous act. It is a story of conviction hardened into conspiracy, of gentlemen turned conspirators, and of one solitary figure who stood among barrels of powder beneath the House of Lords. The video will follow the lives and motives of Guy Fawkes, Robert Catesby, Thomas Wintour, Thomas Percy, and their companions. Men shaped by loss, law, and a conviction that providence required radical action. It will trace the careful plotting in manor houses and cellars, the patient accumulation of gunpowder beneath Parliament, and the fragile chain of secrecy broken by a single anonymous letter. Above all, it will examine how a failed act of destruction was transformed into a ritual of remembrance that would shape English identity for centuries. Beyond the immediate drama of capture, trial, and execution, the introduction frames the long shadow of the Gunpowder Plot, how memory, law, and ritual converted catastrophe into cohesion, and how the figure of Guy Fawkes evolved from villain to symbol. The piece will ask the viewer to consider not only the historical facts, but the enduring questions they raise, how nations use memory to bind themselves, and how dissent and devotion are remembered in the rituals of later generations. England, at the turn of the 17th century, was a realm still trembling from the aftershocks of religious revolution. The fires kindled in the reign of Henry VIII had never truly gone out. Beneath the polished veneer of peace under Elizabeth I, embers of resentment glowed in the hearts of those who had lost their faith's place at the altar of the kingdom. By 1603, the air of London was thick with unease, the scent of incense long replaced by the austerity of Protestant worship, and the grand cathedrals of England, once echoing with Latin hymns, now rang with the sober cadences of the English prayer book. To walk the streets of Elizabethan London was to see a city divided not by walls, but by conscience. Among the crowded markets and narrow lanes, whispers of the old faith persisted. Quiet gatherings in candlelit rooms, the faint murmur of the rosary prayed in secret. Catholics, known as recusants, lived under a cloud of suspicion. Their homes could be searched without warning. Fines and imprisonment shadowed their daily lives. The government's reach extended even into the sacred intimacy of belief. Yet for all this, Catholicism did not die. It retreated underground, surviving in whispers and devotion passed through generations like contraband. Elizabeth's reign had seen great triumphs: the defeat of the Spanish Armada, the flowering of English letters, the stability of her rule. But beneath the crown's brilliance lay the fatigue of a nation stretched between loyalty and faith. When she died in March 1603, an old woman and a sovereign without an heir, England held its breath. The crown would pass to James VI of Scotland, the son of the tragic Mary, Queen of Scots, herself a Catholic martyr in the eyes of many. For England's persecuted Catholics, hope flared anew. They imagined a monarch who might look with leniency upon their suffering, who might allow once more the quiet toll of the Mass bell. But James I, though born of Catholic blood, was no friend to the old religion. He had learned, through his mother's death and his own fragile claim to the English throne, that power in England was inseparable from Protestantism. The early promises of tolerance, whispered by envoys and interpreted eagerly by Catholic ears, dissolved as his reign began. The fines for recusancy returned. Priests were hunted. Families who harbored them risked ruin. In these early years of James's rule, England became a landscape of concealed devotion and smouldering anger. In manor houses across the Midlands and the North, men gathered by hearthlight, speaking not of rebellion, at least not yet, but of deliverance. They prayed that the king would see reason, that persecution would end. Yet as the edicts tightened, as spies multiplied, hope began to wither into desperation. The government's gaze was sharp and unyielding. Agents of the crown infiltrated the Catholic gentry, and the laws of recusancy were enforced with new vigour. Those who refused to attend Anglican services were fined heavily, their lands seized, their families impoverished. The prisons filled with those who would not renounce the Pope. Still, in the shadows, priests moved like ghosts, slipping from house to house through hidden doors and secret passages built into the very walls of recusant homes. These priest holes, ingenious in their construction, became sanctuaries and tombs alike. It was in this climate of oppression that the seeds of the Gunpowder Plot were sown. The men who would one day gather barrels of powder beneath the Parliament House were not born traitors. They were shaped by a country that denied them peace. They saw in the king's government not only tyranny, but betrayal. For James, they believed, had broken his word. To understand the fire that would follow, one must understand the cold from which it came. England was a nation ruled by suspicion, where religion was not merely belief, but allegiance, where a man's prayer could mark him as a threat to the state. Every mass, said in secret, was an act of defiance. Every recusant fine, a reminder that the faith of their fathers had become a crime. The countryside itself mirrored this tension. In the shires, where ancient families clung to the remnants of their estates and their religion, loyalty to Rome ran deep. The old Catholic gentry, impoverished but proud, maintained their chaplains in secret and educated their children abroad in the seminaries of Douai and Valladolid. These were men and women who lived with danger as their constant companion, and among them, the notion of divine justice began to take on a darker hue. For many, the hope of peaceful coexistence died with Elizabeth. Her successor had proven no gentler, and the future held no promise of relief. Thus, by the dawn of 1604, the disillusioned began to turn their thoughts not toward petitions, but toward vengeance. The stage was set. England, weary from decades of religious strife, was about to bear witness to an act of defiance unlike any in its history. In the shadows of Westminster, a handful of men would soon dare to challenge not merely a monarch, but an entire kingdom's faith in its own stability. The men who came to be bound together in the shadowed fraternity of the Gunpowder Plot were, by birth and upbringing, not outlaws, but gentlemen. They belonged to that class of England's rural gentry, which had, for generations, carried the weight of loyalty to both crown and church. Yet the England of James I offered them no place of honour. Their inheritance was not wealth or comfort, but the quiet ruin of recusant fines, confiscations, and social exclusion. From this soil of bitterness and faith, rebellion took root. At the centre of it stood Robert Catesby, a figure of striking presence and restless conviction. Born into an old Warwickshire family, Catesby embodied the contradiction of his age. Educated, devout, yet driven by a zeal that outstripped prudence. His father had been punished for harbouring priests, his estate diminished by the relentless penalties levied upon Catholics. In Catesby's youth, the promise of reconciliation with the crown had seemed faintly possible, but by the time he reached manhood, that illusion had dissolved. He had witnessed the futility of quiet endurance and came to believe that only action, violent and absolute, could restore what faith and patience had failed to preserve. Catesby was no crude fanatic. Those who knew him spoke of his intelligence, his charm, his commanding bearing. Yet beneath this composure lay a volcanic resolve. He was haunted by the conviction that England had betrayed the divine order, that her rulers had usurped the throne of conscience. The death of Elizabeth, which had stirred such hope among Catholics, had only deepened his disillusionment when James proved no saviour. To Catesby, the time for petitions had passed. In the stillness of his ancestral home at Ashby Street Ledgers, amid the heavy tapestries and the worn crucifix of his family chapel, he conceived an act that would burn his name into history. Around Catesby gathered a circle of men who shared his faith and his fury. The first to join him was Thomas Wintour, a man of refinement and education, whose experience abroad had tempered his faith with the discipline of diplomacy. Thomas had served in Flanders and Spain, where he had witnessed both the might of Catholic Europe and the cruelty of its wars. He had seen too much to be naive, yet his loyalty to the Church remained unshaken. Catesby, recognizing his intelligence and the worldly experience, confided in him his vision to strike a blow so terrible that it would shatter the Protestant order and open the way for a Catholic restoration. At first, Wintour hesitated. The thought of rebellion was perilous beyond imagination. Yet as Catesby spoke, the conviction of his words took hold. He spoke not of murder, but of deliverance, not of ambition, but of salvation. He envisioned a single cataclysmic act, the destruction of Parliament itself, that seat of the laws which had persecuted their faith. In one thunderous instant, the king, his ministers, the bishops, and the lords temporal and spiritual would be consumed. Out of the ashes, England would be reborn. Wintour agreed to assist, and the first thread of the conspiracy was spun. To bring the plan from dream to deed, they needed men of courage and secrecy, men bound not only by faith, but by desperation. Among the next to join was Thomas Percy, a relative of the powerful Northumberland family whose lineage carried both prestige and peril. Percy had served as a soldier and was known for his fiery temper and unbending pride. He was employed as a gentleman pensioner to King James, a position that offered him access to courtly circles and thus to information. Yet his loyalty to the monarch was shallow, eroded by the same disillusionment that had drawn so many to Catesby's cause. Through Percy came one of the most fateful connections of all. During his time in Flanders, Thomas Wintour had met a soldier of uncommon skill and resolve, a man whose name would become synonymous with the entire conspiracy, Guy Fawkes. Fawkes was born in York in 1570, the son of Edward Fawkes, a proctor of the ecclesiastical courts, and Edith Blake, of a family sympathetic to the old faith. After his father's death, his mother remarried into a Catholic household, and from that union came the shaping of his faith. As a young man, Fawkes had left England to serve in the armies of Catholic Spain, fighting in the Netherlands against the Protestant Dutch. There he had gained a reputation for bravery and technical skill, particularly in the handling of explosives. To those who met him, Fawkes appeared reserved, almost austere. His face bore the hard lines of a soldier's life. His manner was disciplined, his devotion fervent. Among the conspirators, he was the only one hardened by years of war. When Wintour approached him in Flanders and revealed the plan that Catesby was conceiving, Fawkes listened without visible reaction. Yet beneath that composure lay a deep-seated hatred for the Protestant usurpation of England's soul. He saw himself as a soldier of faith, and to die in such a cause would be no crime but an offering. When he returned to England under an assumed name, he carried with him the experience that would make the plot possible. His presence gave the conspiracy its practical foundation. Without him, the plan would have remained an idea. With him, it became an operation. By early 1604, the core of the plot had taken shape. Catesby, Winter, Percy, and Fawkes met in secret, often in dimly lit chambers where the curtains were drawn tight and the sound of their voices barely rose above a whisper. Their oaths were taken not upon paper, but before God, sealed with the sacrament, for in their eyes this wasn't treason, but divine justice. Soon others were drawn in. John Wright, a skilled swordsman and loyal friend of Catesby, whose quiet intensity concealed an iron will. Christopher Wright, his brother, equally devout and equally committed. And later, Robert Keyes, Thomas Bates, and Sir Everard Digby, a young nobleman of wealth and piety whose resources would prove invaluable. Each man had his reasons, yet all shared a single conviction, that England's soul could not be redeemed through obedience. They saw themselves as instruments of providence, chosen to strike a purifying blow. The network of secrecy expanded cautiously. The conspirators moved through London's alleys and taverns with the careful poise of men who knew that discovery meant death. They spoke little and trusted few. Letters were written in cipher, meetings arranged under pretext. Catesby maintained the outer calm of a gentleman, while within him the fire of purpose burned without rest. The group's unity was not born of equal temperament. Fawkes, ever the soldier, approached the plan with cold precision. Winter with deliberation, Percy with impatience, Catesby with a visionary fervour that made him both leader and prophet. Digby, who would join later, lent the endeavour a veneer of respectability, a touch of idealism that cloaked the grimness of their purpose. In the summer of 1604, these men met in a secluded house in the Strand, rented under a false name. There, they laid the foundation of their pact. The words spoken within those walls would echo across centuries, the resolve to annihilate the very heart of England's government. The plan they conceived was simple in outline, yet monumental in execution: to store barrels of gunpowder beneath the Parliament House and ignite them at the opening session, when King James and the assembled Lords and Commons would be present. The explosion would obliterate the political order of England in a single instant. The scale of their ambition was matched only by their secrecy. They were not rebels seeking to seize open power, but avengers working in the dark. Theirs was a weapon of silence and flame, a declaration written in smoke. In the months that followed, the conspirators grew bolder, though outwardly nothing betrayed their intent. London, oblivious, carried on its daily rhythm. Merchants calling in the markets, church bells marking the hours, the hum of the river traffic upon the Thames. Yet beneath the Parliament chambers, in the low stone vaults that smelled of damp earth and decay, a destiny was taking shape. By the waning months of 1604, the conspiracy had moved beyond intention into execution. What had begun as a vision whispered in secret rooms now demanded substance, powder, place, and opportunity. The conspirators, bound together by faith and peril, turned their eyes toward the very seat of royal authority, the Palace of Westminster. Within its venerable walls, Parliament stood as both symbol and instrument of the Protestant ascendancy. To destroy it was to strike at the heart of the English crown and church alike. The palace itself, sprawling and ancient, rose along the muddy banks of the Thames, its Gothic stonework weathered by centuries of politics and power. Beneath its timbered floors ran a network of cellars and storerooms dark and musty, used by merchants and officials to house goods and provisions. These vaults, often let to private hands, provided the conspirators their greatest advantage: anonymity. In that labyrinth of shadow and stone, where the rumble of the river could scarcely be distinguished from the echo of footsteps above, they saw the perfect hiding place for their vengeance. Robert Catesby, ever the architect of the scheme, moved with a calm that belied the enormity of the undertaking. He and his closest allies, Thomas Wintour, Thomas Percy, John Wright, and Guy Fawkes, met repeatedly through the winter to refine every detail. They sought not chaos but precision, a single act that would obliterate the entire governing class in one thunderous instant. The king, the lords, the commons, all would perish together, their rule consumed by the same fire they had kindled through persecution. The first step was access. Percy, whose position as a gentleman pensioner afforded him proximity to court, secured a tenancy in a house adjoining the Parliament buildings. The property, owned by John Wynyard, an official in the royal household, offered both privacy and an entry point to the undercrofts beneath the House of Lords. Under the pretext of providing accommodation for Percy's servant, the conspirators gained possession of the space in late 1604. There, by candlelight, in the cold, fetid air of the vault, they began their work. Guy Fawkes, whose knowledge of munitions was unrivaled among them, inspected the foundations and found them sound. The plan at first was to dig a tunnel directly beneath the Parliament chamber and conceal the powder within its walls. This, however, proved unnecessary when a more convenient vault was discovered, one that extended directly under the House of Lords itself. Fate, it seemed, had granted them a conspirator's gift. As the month turned, their preparations deepened. The year 1605 dawned cold and unsettled. The Thames shrouded in mist, the streets of London slick with rain and rumour. Yet within the rented cellar, a silence more terrible than the weather reigned. Fawkes took charge of the storage and concealment, moving with the precision of a craftsman. The barrels were brought in small quantities, disguised as merchandise. Beneath layers of firewood and coal, the gunpowder lay hidden. 36 barrels in all, each capable of devastating force. The acquisition of such powder, in those years of constant warfare and trade, drew little notice. Munitions were stored throughout London, often in the possession of merchants and soldiers. Fawkes used his experience to navigate the markets discreetly, purchasing through intermediaries, transporting the cargo by river under cover of darkness. Each barrel represented a silent vow, a measure of their faith rendered in deadly form. Throughout this period, the conspirators lived double lives. By day, they maintained the outward calm of loyal subjects. By night, they moved through the city's alleys and taverns like shadows. The tension of secrecy bound them more tightly than friendship ever could. They shared danger, but also silence. The terrible understanding that discovery would mean death, not only for themselves, but for their families and faith. Catesby's resolve never faltered. Though some among the group, notably Thomas Wintour, began to waver in their confidence, the leader's vision sustained them. To him, the explosion was not mere vengeance, but revelation. In that brief, blinding instant when the Parliament would vanish in smoke and ruin, he believed God's justice would be manifest. England, cleansed of heretical rulers, would rise anew under a Catholic sovereign, perhaps one of James's young children, to be raised in the old faith. To prepare for the aftermath, Catesby expanded his circle carefully. He enlisted Sir Everard Digby, a man of noble birth and sincere piety, whose wealth could finance their plans. Digby's inclusion added both resources and respectability, his estates in Warwickshire serving as meeting grounds and potential rallying points for the Catholic gentry once the explosion had done its work. He was joined by Robert Keyes, whose trustworthiness was proven, and Thomas Bates, Catesby's devoted servant, drawn into the plot by loyalty rather than ideology. Their gatherings took place in secluded manor houses scattered across the Midlands, at Ashby, St Ledgers, at Norbrook, at Courton Court. These homes, with their hidden chapels and priest holes, were already sanctuaries of forbidden faith. The air of conspiracy seemed almost natural within their walls. Maps were spread upon tables, letters burned to ash in hearths, and oaths renewed beneath the dim flicker of candles. Yet, even as their preparations advanced, the outside world shifted with its own unrelenting rhythm. The opening of Parliament, initially scheduled for February 1605, was postponed due to fears of plague in London. Then it was delayed again. Each postponement increased the risk of discovery and tested the patience of the conspirators. Fawkes, who had taken up residence in the rented vault under the alias John Johnson, lived constantly on edge, guarding the powder, checking its condition, and maintaining his guise as Percy's servant. London, in those anxious months, was a city alive with rumour. The government remained vigilant for Catholic agitation, though the specific danger lay well hidden. In taverns and markets, talk of Spain, of recusants, and of divine judgment drifted like smoke through the air. Yet the true inferno slept unseen, beneath the Parliament's floors, waiting only for the spark that would awaken it. The summer passed into autumn, and with it came renewed determination. The conspirators, though strained by delay, held fast. By October 1605, the new date for Parliament's opening was set, the 5th of November. The moment of reckoning, long deferred, had finally arrived. Fawkes, as the chosen executor of their plan, prepared with methodical care. He examined the fuses, ensuring their reliability. He reinforced the powder, protected it from damp, and tested the stored materials. Above his head, in the chamber of the Lords, carpenters worked unsuspectingly, repairing benches and panelling. Their hammers struck inches above the gunpowder that would have destroyed them all. Outside the Parliament walls, Catesby and his companions made their final arrangements. In the chaos that would follow the explosion, they intended to seize Princess Elizabeth, the king's young daughter, who was being educated in the countryside. Under her name, they would proclaim a new Catholic monarchy, guided by their cause. They imagined England in flames, her rulers gone, her conscience restored by divine retribution. As All Hallows' Eve approached, the air itself seemed heavy with foreboding. The river flowed dark beneath the Parliament embankments. The city's bells tolled over a populace ignorant of its peril. Fawkes, in the flickering light of his lantern, waited among the barrels, his expression unchanging. The soldier of Spain, the exile of York, had become the keeper of England's most dangerous secret. The autumn of 1605 settled over London with a damp, uneasy stillness. The air was cold and heavy with river mist, the sun rarely breaking through the shroud of grey that hung above the Thames. The city, oblivious to the storm gathering in its midst, moved through the slow rhythm of preparation for Parliament's long-awaited opening. Merchants brought their goods to market, courtiers returned from the countryside, and workmen toiled within Westminster's walls, mending benches, polishing floors, readying the chamber for the king's arrival. Beneath those same floors, in the dark and suffocating air of a rented cellar, lay 36 barrels of gunpowder, their deadly potential sealed in silence. The conspirators had reached the brink. The years of secrecy, the long nights of whispered counsel, and the careful laying of their design had brought them to this moment. Their patience was near its end. Robert Catesby, the architect of the vision, had moved between London and the Midlands with quiet intensity, overseeing every final detail. His followers, bound by loyalty, faith, and fear, prepared themselves for the act that would, in their eyes, deliver England from heresy. In late October, the final arrangements took shape. Guy Fawkes, under the alias John Johnson, remained in constant watch over the vault beneath the House of Lords. He had grown accustomed to its darkness, the scent of earth and gunpowder mingling with the damp of the river. His duty was singular: to guard the powder and to light the fuse when the signal came. Above him, the business of state continued unknowing. The conspirators had divided their labours. Catesby, Digby, and others made preparations for what would follow the explosion. The uprising that would seize Princess Elizabeth from Combe Abbey and proclaim her queen in the name of the Catholic cause. Horses were gathered, arms and armour stored at secluded manors in the Midlands. The country roads between Dunchurch, Corfton and Holbeach were marked in their minds like the lines of a campaign map. But even as they readied themselves, a shadow of unease began to creep among them. The secrecy that had shielded their plot for so long now felt brittle. Too many men knew too much. Too many preparations had been made. And in the midst of their confidence, a single letter would undo them all. On the evening of October 26, Lord Monteagle, a Catholic nobleman known to some of the conspirators, received an anonymous warning. The letter, delivered by an unknown messenger, urged him to avoid the opening of Parliament, hinting darkly at a terrible blow that would fall upon that day. Monteagle, startled by its tone, carried it to the authorities. The message was soon placed before Robert Cecil, the King's chief minister, a man whose intelligence network reached into every corner of the realm. At first, Cecil treated the letter with cautious suspicion. England had long been haunted by rumours of Catholic conspiracies. Many proved unfounded. Yet this message, obscure as it was, spoke of a danger too specific to ignore. The king himself, when informed, saw in it the outline of a true threat. The words blow and Parliament stirred his imagination toward the ancient fear of gunpowder. Still, the government chose not to act rashly. Days passed. The conspirators remained unaware that their secret had begun to unravel. Fawkes continued his vigil beneath Parliament, confident and composed. His demeanour betrayed nothing. He checked the barrels, examined the fuses, and prepared the tools he would need. To those who saw him, he appeared as any servant might, quiet, dutiful, unremarkable. By November 4th, the eve of Parliament's opening, the tension had reached its peak. The conspirators gathered one last time in London, in a house near St Clement Danes. Catesby's eyes burned with conviction. The others, though weary, still believed their moment was at hand. The plan was simple. Fawkes would light the fuse in the early hours before dawn and escape across the river to join them. When the explosion tore through Westminster, they would rise in open rebellion in the Midlands, rallying England's Catholics to their cause. As night descended, the streets of Westminster grew quiet. The wind rose from the river, rattling shutters and carrying with it the faint murmur of the tide. Within the vault, Guy Fawkes prepared for the final act. He was dressed in cloak and boots, a sword at his side, a slow match fuse coiled within reach. Above him, the Parliament building loomed in silence, its chambers ready for the assembly of the realm, its walls unaware of the inferno beneath them. But the same night that promised the fulfillment of the plot also brought its ruin. Acting upon the king's growing unease, Sir Thomas Knivett, a magistrate and trusted officer of the crown, was ordered to conduct a discreet search of the Parliament's undercrofts. The command came late, but not too late. Shortly after midnight, Knivett and his men entered the darkened vaults beneath the building. Their torches threw long, trembling shadows along the stone walls. The air was close and heavy, carrying the scent of damp earth and wood. There, among piles of firewood and coal, they found a solitary figure. Guy Fawkes stood calm and motionless, a lantern in his hand. He offered no resistance, his demeanor unshaken. When the guards uncovered the barrels hidden beneath the timber, the truth revealed itself in an instant, a truth so vast and terrible that words could scarcely contain it. 36 barrels of powder, enough to shatter Westminster and hurl its stones into the Thames, lay ready to ignite. The discovery was swift, the consequences immeasurable. Fawkes was seized, bound, and taken through the chill night to Whitehall. There, before dawn, he was brought before the king and his ministers. His bearing astonished them, unflinching, composed, as if he had foreseen this end. To the men of government, he seemed not a criminal, but a fanatic forged of iron. As the news spread, London stirred from its slumber into chaos. Bells tolled in alarm. Soldiers filled the streets. Torches flared in the fog. The conspirators, still unaware of the discovery, awaited word from Fawkes that never came. When the truth reached them, disbelief turned to terror. Catesby, Winter, and the others fled the city before dawn, riding hard toward the Midlands through the rain and darkness. Behind them, the full machinery of royal justice began to turn. Warrants were issued, messengers dispatched, the roads watched. The realm, still trembling from the narrowness of its escape, turned upon those who had plotted its destruction. The night of November 4th had ended, not with the thunder of explosion, but with the whisper of discovery. A whisper that would grow into the roar of vengeance. The powder lay unlit, but the fire they had kindled in their hearts would soon consume them. Dawn broke over London on the 5th of November, 1605, cold and pale, the light struggling through a veil of mist that clung to the river. The sound of alarm bells spread across the city, echoing from steeple to steeple. What had been a kingdom at peace the night before awoke in shock and fear. The greatest act of treason in living memory had been averted by the narrowest of margins. Beneath the Parliament's stone vaults, men with torches and halberds stared in disbelief at the barrels of gunpowder that might have destroyed them all. Guy Fawkes, the solitary figure discovered guarding that deadly cargo, was now bound in irons within the Tower of London. He had been taken there through streets thick with rumour and outrage, escorted by armed guards who regarded him with a mixture of horror and fascination. To the crowd, he was already a legend, the man who would have reduced a kingdom to ashes. Within the tower, the interrogations began. Fawkes gave his name as John Johnson, servant to Thomas Percy, and maintained a calm defiance that unsettled his captors. His silence was not born of fear but of conviction. His loyalty to his cause remained unbroken even in the face of certain death. The King's Council, gathered in anxious deliberation, resolved to extract the truth by any means necessary. In that cold fortress beside the Thames, the instruments of torture were prepared. The rack, the manacles, the rope and pulley. For 2 days, Fawkes endured their questions with unyielding composure. His hands, once steady enough to light a fuse that might have ended a dynasty, were torn and twisted upon the rack until his body could no longer resist the strain. At last, broken in flesh if not in spirit, he confessed. The names of his accomplices, long guarded in silence, began to emerge through pain and exhaustion. Meanwhile, far from the capital, the other conspirators fled. Before the morning fog had lifted from the Thames, Robert Catesby, Thomas Wintour, Thomas Percy, John Wright, and their remaining companions rode northward through the muddy lanes of the Midlands. The rain fell cold and relentless, turning the roads to mire beneath their horses' hooves. They carried with them little hope, yet still clung to the faint illusion that they might rally their fellow Catholics to arms. Their path took them first to Ashby Street Ledgers, Catesby's ancestral home, and then to Dunchurch, where Sir Everard Digby had assembled a gathering of sympathetic gentry under the guise of a hunting party. But when word reached them that the plot had been discovered and Fawkes taken, the company dissolved in panic. The countryside, far from rising in rebellion, recoiled in terror. No Catholic noble dared join them. No priest would bless their cause. Driven by desperation, the fugitives pressed onward. They moved from house to house, pursued by the king's men, their numbers dwindling as exhaustion and despair took hold. The cold November rain soaked their cloaks and extinguished their hopes. At Norbrook, they paused to collect weapons. At Huddington Court, they found refuge briefly among sympathizers. Yet the circle was closing around them. By November 7th, they had reached Holbeach House in Staffordshire, a lonely manor surrounded by flat fields and leafless trees. There, soaked, starving, and hunted, they made their final stand. Inside the house they attempted to dry their gunpowder before the fire, but fate, as if mocking their purpose, turned against them once more. A stray spark ignited the powder, and a sudden blast filled the room with smoke and flame. Several were burned and wounded. Their last weapon had turned upon them. The next morning, the forces of the Crown closed in. Sheriff Richard Walsh of Worcestershire, leading a band of soldiers and militia, surrounded the manor. The conspirators, knowing escape was impossible, prepared to die as soldiers rather than submit as traitors. Catesby, wounded from the earlier explosion, stood beside Thomas Percy, his friend and comrade in both faith and fate. Muskets fired through the smoke. The walls shook with the thunder of gunfire. When the smoke cleared, both men lay dead, struck down together near the doorway. John and Christopher Wright had fallen moments earlier, cut down as they attempted to return fire from the windows. The remaining survivors, Thomas Winter, Ambrose Rookwood, and a few others, were captured alive, their injuries binding them to the mercy of the king's justice. Holbeach House, once a place of refuge, became the tomb of the rebellion. News of the shootout spread swiftly. By the time their bodies were carried back toward London, the image of the conspirators had already been shaped in the public mind. Villains, papists, enemies of England. The government, eager to reinforce this vision, displayed their remains as symbols of treason's inevitable end. In the Tower, the captured men were interrogated one by one. Thomas Wintour, though weakened by his wound, confirmed much of what Fawkes had already confessed. Rookwood, Keyes, Bates, and others followed. Their testimonies, extracted under duress, revealed the full scope of the conspiracy. The meetings at Ashby Street Ledgers, the rented cellar, the barrels, the plan to seize Princess Elizabeth. No detail was spared in the government's careful documentation, for this was not only an investigation, but a performance of justice. The king himself took keen interest in the proceedings. James, ever conscious of divine providence, saw in the failed plot a sign of God's protection over his reign. Sermons were preached across the realm in thanksgiving. Public prayers were ordered to mark the deliverance of Parliament. The people, who had known little peace amid years of suspicion, now found a new unity in the rejection of treason. The trials began in January 1606. In Westminster Hall, the surviving conspirators were brought before the court, gaunt and broken from imprisonment. The charge was read with solemn formality. For traitorously imagining and compassing the death of our sovereign Lord the King. The evidence was overwhelming, the outcome never in doubt. On the 27th day of January, they were condemned. The sentence was death by hanging, drawing, and quartering, the ancient punishment reserved for traitors. The following morning, the executions began. At St. Paul's Churchyard, Thomas Wintour, Ambrose Rookwood, Robert Keyes, and Guy Fawkes were brought forth before a vast crowd. The air was sharp with winter frost. Banners of the Royal Guard fluttered against the pale sky. One by one, the conspirators ascended the scaffold. Their faces, pale but resolute, bore the marks of suffering and exhaustion. When Fawkes mounted the platform, his steps were unsteady, the result of his torture. Yet even then, he carried himself with the same composure that had marked him from the first night of his capture. The crowd watched in silence as he stood before the noose. Whether from defiance or mercy, he leapt from the ladder before the executioner could complete his task, breaking his neck instantly. His body, lifeless, was nevertheless subjected to the full ritual of dismemberment, as the law required. The remains of the conspirators were displayed upon pikes, their heads placed upon London Bridge and city gates, grim warnings to any who might harbour similar thoughts. The rebellion had ended not with fire and thunder, but with rope and silence. Across England, relief mingled with dread. The government moved swiftly to secure the peace. New laws were enacted to bind Catholics under stricter oaths of allegiance. The Church of Rome, once seen as a distant spiritual power, was now regarded as the hidden hand behind treachery. A new national ritual was born, the annual commemoration of the King's deliverance, marked by bells, bonfires, and thanksgiving. The government of King James I wasted no time in turning the failed plot into a triumph of royal providence. From the pulpits of London to the parish churches of the countryside, sermons proclaimed the event as a miracle of divine intervention. The king, so nearly lost, was presented as the chosen guardian of England's peace, his survival proof of God's favour upon the Protestant realm. The words of thanksgiving echoed from every cathedral, accompanied by the tolling of bells and the burning of bonfires that cast flickering light across towns and villages alike. What had begun as an act of intended destruction became instead the foundation of a new ritual, a national expression of loyalty and deliverance. On the 5th day of November, every year henceforth, the people of England were ordered to give thanks for their king's preservation. The observance of 5th November Act, passed by Parliament in January 1606, made the commemoration a matter of law. Prayers of gratitude were to be read in all churches, and citizens were encouraged to mark the day with celebration and fire. Thus, from the ashes of treason, arose the tradition that would endure for centuries. Bonfire Night, the act of remembrance, though wrapped in joy, carried beneath it a deep and enduring message, that Catholicism and treason were one and the same. The conspirators' failure had given the crown the very justification it sought, to strengthen its hold upon the realm. In the wake of the plot, new laws were passed to bind the recusant population more tightly. Catholics were required to swear oaths of allegiance that denied the Pope's power to depose the king. Fines for non-attendance at Protestant services grew harsher. The faint hope that James's reign might bring tolerance was extinguished. In every county, officials redoubled their efforts to uncover hidden priests, to destroy private chapels, and to compel conformity. Families that had long walked the narrow line between faith and loyalty found that the balance had tipped irrevocably. To be Catholic in England was to be marked, not by one's private belief, but by the suspicion it cast in the eyes of the law. The conspirators themselves were reduced to names in proclamations and pamphlets, their deeds retold as moral warnings. Robert Catesby, once the charismatic heart of rebellion, was depicted as a fanatic whose pride had invited divine retribution. Thomas Percy, heir to a great northern lineage, was remembered not for his courage, but for his betrayal of nobility. The Wright brothers, Rookwood, Digby, and the rest, all were cast in the same light, men of false zeal, consumed by error and punished by justice. Yet among them, one figure stood apart. Guy Fawkes, the soldier from York, the man found among the barrels, became the living emblem of the plot. His name, more than any other, endured in the memory of the nation. Perhaps it was his composure in capture, or the stark simplicity of his role, that fixed him so deeply in the public imagination. He was the one who had nearly done the deed, the man who had stood alone beneath Parliament with the means to unmake it. Over time, his name detached itself from the others, taking on a life of its own. The 5th of November has evolved from solemn thanksgiving into festivity. Children carried lanterns through the streets, effigies of the conspirators, and most often of Fawkes himself, were burned upon great pyres. The bonfires that had symbolized deliverance from death became occasions of communal delight, though always tinged with the echo of their grim origin. Across fields and marketplaces, the cry of "Remember, remember, the 5th of November, gunpowder, treason, and plot," began to precede the lighting of the fire. The legacy of that November night endured not through its violence, but through its memory. It became part of the national consciousness, a story retold in classrooms, in pulpits, and in the laughter of children around the bonfire. In time, the act of remembrance drifted from religion to ritual, from ritual to folklore. Fireworks replaced sermons, effigies replaced prayer. Yet beneath the spectacle, the same moral current remained, that treason, however born of conviction, leads only to ruin. In the centuries that followed, the image of Guy Fawkes continued to change. In the England of the 19th century, his effigy, the Guy, became a symbol of mischief, paraded through streets by children seeking coins for fireworks. In the 20th and 21st, his face, stylized into a mask, came to represent something far removed from its origin: defiance against authority, rebellion against corruption, protest in the name of freedom. Thus, the man who once sought to destroy a government by fire became, in the modern age, a ghostly emblem worn by those who would challenge power through other means. Yet history, beneath these transformations, holds to its truth. Guy Fawkes was neither the devil his contemporaries imagined, nor the hero his legend later made him. He was a soldier caught in the web of faith and politics that defined his age. A man shaped by persecution, loyalty, and the unyielding conviction that God demanded action where patience had failed. The Gunpowder Plot, in turn, was neither madness nor miracle, but the tragic culmination of decades of division and mistrust. As centuries passed, the events of 1605 faded from immediate memory, yet they left behind a mark indelible upon the English mind. The vault beneath the House of Lords remained, cleansed of powder, yet eternal in symbolism. Each year, before Parliament opens, the yeomen of the guard still perform a ceremonial search of its cellars, a ritual echo of that night when one man and his barrels nearly altered the course of history. The Gunpowder Plot was not merely a crime of politics, nor simply a contest of faith. It was the violent symptom of a deeper fracture, the division of conscience that tore through England in the wake of the Reformation. It arose from a time when belief was bound to allegiance, and the soul of the kingdom was measured in doctrine and prayer. To the conspirators, the act was not treason, but deliverance. To the state, it was not rebellion, but damnation. Between those two convictions lay the tragedy of their age. The failure of their act was in this sense inevitable, but its failure gave birth to something enduring. From the ashes of their plot rose a stronger monarchy, a more unified Protestant state, and a nation bound together by the shared memory of deliverance. The fear that the conspirators sought to sow became the foundation of loyalty. Their treason gave the realm its annual ritual of unity. Every bonfire that followed was more than a celebration. It was an act of reaffirmation that the Crown and Parliament, flawed though they were, remained the heart of the nation's endurance. The fire that was meant to destroy them became the symbol of their survival. Over the centuries, the meaning of the 5th of November transformed, as all symbols do. What began as thanksgiving for divine preservation evolved into a carnival of noise and flame. The effigy of Guy Fawkes, burned each year, was at first a warning, later a jest, and finally an emblem of something more complex, the eternal tension between authority and dissent. The face that once marked the enemy of the realm became, in later ages, the mask of rebellion against tyranny. Each year, when the night of the 5th arrives and the fires rise against the dark, the echoes of that long-ago conspiracy stir once more. The children who watch the flames dance do not think of Robert Catesby or Thomas Winter, or the tortured silence of Guy Fawkes in the tower. Yet in the sparks that drift upward into the cold autumn air, their memory ascends, transformed, purified, eternal. And so the story endures, not as the triumph of rebellion, nor as the glory of power, but as the enduring lesson that in the contest between faith and governance, between the firebrand and the crown, history preserves not the act, but the remembrance. The vault beneath Parliament remains, the river still flows, the fires still burn, and England, ever watchful, remembers. And so, the Gunpowder Plot remains one of the most infamous conspiracies in English history. A failed attempt that could have changed the very course of the monarchy and the nation itself. While the conspirators met a grim end, their story endures. Remembered each year on the 5th of November with bonfires, fireworks, and the warning, remember, remember. But what do you think? Was the Gunpowder Plot truly the work of desperate Catholic rebels? Or was it exaggerated, or even manipulated by the Crown to strengthen its hold on power? If you enjoyed this dive into history, be sure to like this video, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss the next story from the past. And if you'd like to support more content like this, consider sharing this video with a fellow history enthusiast. Thank you for watching, and remember, history is never just the past, it's the foundation of the present.